The sun hung low over the vast Texas horizon, bleeding warm gold into the dusty earth. Jace Dalton guided his black stallion along the familiar trail towards Dalton Ranch, the rhythmic beat of hooves echoing in the quiet evening. The air smelled of dry grass, leather, and the faint sweetness of mesquite trees. He had returned earlier than expected from the cattle auction, not because he lost interest in business, but because something inside him had been restless all week. That restlessness only deepened when, as he neared the stables, he spotted a figure who didn't belong, a stranger in a worn, dust-covered dress. She was slight, her frame fragile against the backdrop of weathered wood and towering bales of hay. The brim of a faded bonnet shaded her face, but not enough to hide the tension in her movements. She was gathering stray tufts of hay with deliberate care, though the work seemed more like a distraction than a chore. Jace dismounted, boots crunching against the gravel, and the sound made her startle. She spun, nearly dropping the bundle in her arms. That reaction was enough to raise his guard. People didn't jump like that unless they were hiding something, a broken bar or running from someone. "What's your name?" His voice was steady, deep, a rancher's voice that didn't invite much argument. She hesitated, clutching the hay closer. "Lily, a broken bar, sir," she said finally, the "a sir" sounding like it came from habit rather than respect. Her voice was soft, with an accent that didn't match any of the folks around these parts. It wasn't Southern, and it sure as hell wasn't Texan. The uncertainty in her tone only made Jace's suspicion grow. He took a slow step forward, eyes scanning her dress, a plain, beige, and far too warm for the heat of the day. More curious than that, her hands kept drifting to the hem of her skirt, pulling it down as though she feared the slightest lift. It was a nervous, almost protective gesture, repeated without thought. Jace's gaze sharpened. "You work in here now?" "Haven't seen you around before," he said, his boots closing the space between them. "No, sir." "Yeah, broken bar, I'm just helping." "Won't be here long," she murmured, not meeting his eyes. Her fingers twisted into the fabric at her sides. The stallion behind him snorted, shifting restlessly as though picking up on the tension. The ranch was quiet otherwise, but that quiet wasn't peaceful, and it was tight, holding something unspoken between them. Jace's mind worked fast. A lone woman on his land, no one to vouch for her, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. A broken bar. He dealt with enough drifters and trespassers to know when someone was hiding a truth. Then she looked up, her eyes wide and bright, and there it was. Fear. Not the kind that came from being caught somewhere you shouldn't be. This was deeper, rawer, the kind that came from being cornered. "Please, he broken bar," she said suddenly, voice trembling. "Please, don't lift my skirt." The request landed like a shot in the quiet. Jace stilled. Of all the things she could have said, that wasn't what he'd expected. He wasn't sure whether to be offended or intrigued. His brow furrowed as he searched her face for an explanation, but she quickly looked away, cheeks flushed, hands gripping the fabric even tighter. He could have stepped back, respected her plea, and walked away. A decent man might have. But Jace Dalton wasn't just a decent man, he was a curious one, and curiosity had a way of digging into him like a spur in his side. He was used to control, to having answers. And right now, this woman's fear was a question demanding to be answered. "Why?" he asked, his voice low. She didn't speak at first, only glanced toward the barn door as though half expecting someone else to appear. "It's a broken bar, nothing," she finally whispered. "It's private. Just leave it." That only made the itch worse. He'd spent his life negotiating cattle deals, sniffing out lies, reading tells in men who thought they could bluff him. She was lying, or at least hiding something big. He could see it in the way her shoulders stiffened, in the quick dart of her eyes. Jace took another slow step forward. She took one back. The stables were dim now, the last light of day spilling through the gaps in the wooden walls, turning the dust motes into drifting flecks of gold. It should have been a peaceful scene, but his pulse had picked up, matching the slow, heavy thump of his boots against the ground. He was close enough now to see the edge of fraying fabric along her skirt seam, the faint outline of something rigid pressing against her thigh beneath the cloth. Lily saw where his gaze had landed and flinched as though burned. "Don't," she said again, sharper this time. But the way she said it had part fear, part desperation. It was the final nail in the coffin of his restraint. Jace had grown up on this ranch, had seen strangers come and go, but he never had someone step into his world and spark this mix of suspicion and unease. The stallion gave another restless snort. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote's yip echoed over the open fields. The moment seemed suspended, drawn out like a taut rope. Then Jace bent down, his gloved hand reaching for the edge of her skirt. He didn't yank or tear, he lifted just enough for the fading light to catch what was hidden underneath. And in that split second, he saw something that made the air feel heavier, the world quieter. For a moment, Jace Dalton didn't breathe. Beneath the faded beige fabric, strapped tight to Lily's thigh with worn leather, was a revolver. Not just any revolver, an old Colt, small enough to conceal but heavy with history. Its metal was darkened with age, yet the polished grip told him it had been cared for. His gaze locked on the strange engravings along the barrel, a set of swirling initials cut deep into the steel AJD. His initials. A cold prickle crawled up his spine. He knew this gun. Or rather, he knew of it. It had belonged to his father, the late Samuel Dalton, a man whose legend lingered across the plains like the scent of rain before a storm. Samuel had been many things: a rancher, negotiator, occasional lawman when trouble came too close. But he had lost that gun years before his death. At least, that was what Jace had believed. His voice came low, steady. "Where'd you get this?" Lily's lips parted, but no sound came at first. She swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "Yeah, Broken Bar, I came here to return it," she said finally. Her voice carried something more than guilt, and carried weight, as if the truth was heavy enough to crush her. "Return it?" Jace echoed. "Why the hell would you have my father's gun?" Her eyes softened, glistening under the dim stable light. "Because he Broken Bar, he gave it to me. The night he saved my life." The words struck him like a hammer. Samuel Dalton had been gone for nearly a decade, taken by a gunfight no one in the family liked to talk about. But in all the stories, there had never been a mention of a girl named Lily. "You're gonna have to do a hell of a lot better than that," he said, his voice taut. "You don't just stroll onto my land with something like this and expect me to take your word." She took a deep breath, as though bracing for pain. "I didn't come to stir trouble. I came because I think someone's after me, Broken Bar, and after you." The words hung in the air, strange and heavy. Outside, the wind hissed through the dry grass, and the faint sound of boots scuffing wood reached his ears, but there was no one else in sight. Still, his instincts sharpened. "Start talking," Jace ordered. Lily nodded slowly, her voice steadying as she began. "It was 10 years ago. I was 16, alone, and running from a man who wouldn't take no for an answer. He wasn't just some suitor, he was dangerous, connected to people who don't forgive insults. I thought I'd made it far enough west to disappear a Broken Bar, but they found me outside a saloon in Abilene." She paused, her gaze drifting past Jace as though she could still see the memory playing out. "I was cornered in the alley. And then your father was there. I didn't know him, but he stepped between me and the men like he'd been waiting for the moment. He didn't draw his gun at first, he just talked, "Come as you please." But when one of them reached for his own, your father was faster. I still don't know how he managed it, but they were gone in minutes. I think a broken bar. I think he knew they'd come back for me, because he pressed this revolver into my hand and told me to run until my feet bled if I had to. Jace's jaw tightened. It sounded like something his father might have done. But Samuel Dalton had died in a shootout a few months after that, and there had been whispers that the fight hadn't been over cattle or land, but something personal. "You're telling me my father died because of you?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "Number. No, I'm telling you he died because he was the kind of man who wouldn't stand aside when someone needed help. But I think the people who came after me broken bar, they're the same ones who came for him. And I think they've found me again." Jace studied her, searching for cracks in her story. But everything in her face, the tightness in her voice, the flicker of guilt in her eyes, rang true. Before he could ask more, the sound of a horse's distant whinny broke the tension. It wasn't from the Dalton stables. It came from beyond the ridge, faint but distinct. Jace's muscles coiled. Strangers didn't ride in at dusk unless they wanted trouble or thought they wouldn't be seen. "You followed?" he asked sharply. Her silence was answer enough. Jace stepped back, his mind shifting from suspicion to preparation. "Stay here," he ordered, already moving toward the barn door. But Lily caught his arm, surprising him with her grip. "Number. If they see me alone, I'm dead. You don't understand who they are." His eyes locked on hers, reading the sheer conviction there. For the first time since finding her, Jace felt the edge of fearing, not for himself, but for her. Footsteps scrunched on gravel outside. Slow. Deliberate. Jace drew his own revolver from the holster at his side, the familiar weight settling into his palm. "Then you'd better start explaining," he said quietly, "because if someone's bringing a fight to my land, I need to know who I'm killing." Lily hesitated, her breath quickening. "His name is Barrett Cole. He runs a smuggling ring out of New Mexico, guns, gold, and blood money. He's ruthless. I saw him kill a man for less than a missed payment. He wanted me because I knew too much, a broken bar because I heard something I shouldn't have. Your father stopped him once, but he never forgot. Now, he's after me. And you." The name hit Jace like a whip crack. Barrett Cole wasn't just trouble, he was the kind of trouble that made lawmen look the other way and good men disappear. Outside, the footsteps stopped. The air thickened with silence. Then, a voice called out, smooth and taunting. "Evening, Dalton. Got room for visitors?" Jace stepped into the open, revolver at his side but ready. A man stood there in the fading light, tall and lean, his hat shadowing sharp features. Two more men flanked him, their hands resting casually but not idly on the butts of their pistols. "Not for your kind," Jace replied flatly. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We're looking for a girl. Slipped away from her rightful company. Thought maybe she found herself a new host." Lily appeared behind Jace before he could stop her, the revolver still strapped to her leg. The man's eyes flicked to her, and the smile turned thin. "Well, there she is. Makes things easy." Jace moved just enough to block her from full view. "She's not going anywhere with you." The man tilted his head, his hand drifting toward his holster. "Then I guess we got ourselves a choice to make." The choice, as far as Jace was concerned, was already made.